Okay, well, cops kill dog in Hawthorne. This has been an actually very interesting topic for me because, for those of you who don't know, I work in law enforcement in a limited capacity. But I think it raises some very crucial issues that people really need to be aware of. And I am not going to specifically choose sides here. What I am going to do is give a point of view from a more officer-based perspective as to what happened in that video and try and explain why what happened. Because I personally don't like the idea of shooting anything if I can help it. I really wish that officers didn't have to make arrests. I really wish that people could learn to be more cooperative with police. I think that in the vast majority of situations, people who find themselves targeted by police without getting into specifics of real police brutality, real officer racial profiling, real officer discrimination against people, real officers actually losing their cool. I think that the vast majority of police interactions always have something to do with the person who is on the receiving end of it actually requiring that interaction. Bear with me before you start jumping on the bandwagon of saying that I am pro-police or anti-police or anything of the sort. Like I said, I work as an officer myself. I am not a policeman, but I do work in law enforcement. So, if we look at the Zimmerman case, or not the Zimmerman case, sorry, I think I'll do a video on that shortly. But if we look at this police shooting in Hawthorne there's a couple of things that I can see that have happened. Number one is a lot of people accuse the police of being angry that a man was simply filming the police and ended up being arrested. What I can see from my point of view in that particular case is that they have a road blockaded. There are 6 police cars stopping that road from being accessed by anybody. There are a number of policemen walking around with assault rifles. I assure you, police don't get to block off roads and walk around with assault rifles unless they have a damn good reason for doing so. If they're doing that, chances are it's not the time to be walking up to them with a camera, right? By all means, film the police. In fact, I am entirely 100% in favor of filming the police. If I'm on the street dealing with somebody and you're filming me, I like that. I would really like a very honest point of view, which is what a video is. If I'm ever called to court for something, I would love to have a video present to show the judge and say, this is exactly what happened, Your Honor. If I'm doing my job right, that will completely justify my actions every time. If I'm doing my job wrong, I want to be corrected. I want to not do it wrong any longer. And that's why we have courts, that's why we have judges, that's why we have things like videos and evidence and the like. If a police officer is not happy with your filming them, most of the time they just want you to back away. And the reasons for this can be many. But in this case, we had a bunch of police officers that were dealing with something that required assault rifles. I would like to stress that again. They were dealing with whatever it was, I don't know what it was, but it required them to have 6 units standing blocking off that street and for police officers to be walking around with assault rifles. Now this man, whose dog was eventually shot, was walking around with a huge dog. an attack dog, really. I mean, that dog, despite however he raised it, that dog was bred for the purposes of attack. Now, he's walking around with that dog, and he's getting as close as he can to those police, and he's asking why there aren't any black cops over and over again, shouting at these police who are dealing with something that requires them to be holding assault rifles. I understand that there are inequities, that there are people that, or there are racial problems within police forces. There is a very legitimate point to be made as to why there weren't any black police there. Now, that's not something to debate at that time. That is not something to be distracting police officers with at that time. I encourage people, if you happen to be a racial minority, if you happen to be, somebody who the police really want to bring onto their force, and trust me, the police hiring practices are such that they will do anything to get racial minorities on their police forces. If you wonder why there aren't any black police officers at a particular scene, ask yourself if you've applied for the job. If you happen to be a black person who has a qualm about white police officers being on the streets, have you applied for the job? I personally hope that you have, and I would like to see you on the force. Now, shouting this at police officers who are dealing with a situation that requires assault rifles constitutes distraction, and possibly, in a situation like that, a lethal distraction. If I have an assault rifle out, it's not because I have the time to have a conversation about why I, as a white man, was dispatched to a crime scene, to whatever it is that's going on. I would truly like to have that conversation. And if I were in the situation, yes, I would have arrested him as well. Why? What was their plan? Arrest him, put him in the back of the police car, and wait until the situation is over. He's getting too close. He's distracting officers. Somebody could get hurt. That man basically demanded to be arrested. There was no other way of dealing with him, in my personal opinion. When it comes down to officer safety, when it comes down to public safety, you do what you need to do now. And no police officer should spend very much time in a situation where it is life and death worrying about whether or not they're going to offend somebody. I will deal with offense later, after everybody's still alive. So they arrest this man, and his dog comes out, and after 3 attempts to catch the dog's leash, the dog keeps on trying to nip at people, or nip at police officers, and the police shoot the dog. In my opinion, the police really, in that particular instance, right where they were, in that 30 seconds of video clip where A, the dog should not have been there in the first place, B, the man should not have been there in the first place to get arrested, C, there was a horrible situation going down that required police officers to have assault rifles out in the first place, right? In that 30 seconds where the dog starts nipping at people, I want to say a 150-pound dog is not something that I want to spend time fighting with when I'm dealing with something that requires assault rifles in the first place. So would I have done anything differently myself? No. I hate to say it as bluntly as that, but if I were to do anything differently, I wouldn't have let the dog suffer that long. I would have stopped the dog with a couple of shots, and then I would have euthanized the dog right there. And call me callous, call me what you want, but I think that that is what is required in a situation like what you saw. Would I feel proud of it? Would I be bragging to people about it? No, I would feel absolutely horrible. I really would, but I would still do it and I would still consider it necessary, and I would still walk up in front of a judge and explain my actions, and I would show that exact video to the judge and have the judge rule on it. That's my take.